The cargo ship broke apart as it hit the atmosphere of Verdansk 7. Jake Morrison held onto his seat with both hands while alarms screamed all around him. Metal twisted and tore. The control panel exploded in sparks. Then everything went black. When Jake opened his eyes, pain shot through his left arm. He was lying in the dirt outside his destroyed ship. Pieces of metal were scattered everywhere. Trees with purple leaves surrounded him. 2 moons hung in the dark sky above. Jake sat up slowly and checked himself. His arm was badly bruised but not broken. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. His ribs hurt when he breathed. But he was alive. He stood on shaky legs and looked at what remained of his ship. The cargo bay was completely gone. The cockpit was crushed. Small fires burned in several places. His emergency beacon blinked red on a piece of debris 20 feet away. That was good. Rescue would find him eventually. Jake pulled out his emergency kit from under a bent panel. Inside was a medical pack, water purifier, 2 days of food rations, a thermal blanket, and a flare gun. Not much, but enough to survive until help arrived. He treated his head wound first. The cut was not deep. He wrapped a bandage around it and swallowed 2 pain pills. Then he drank some water and sat down on a rock to rest. That was when he heard the sound. It was faint at first, a kind of crying or whimpering. Jake froze and listened. The sound came again. It was not human. It was not from any creature he recognized, but it sounded young. It sounded scared. Jake picked up a metal bar from the wreckage for protection. He walked slowly toward the sound. His boots crunched on the strange purple grass. The crying got louder as he moved between the trees. Then he saw it. Another crash site. A small ship, maybe the size of a car, had smashed into the ground. Its hull was dark red with gold markings. Smoke rose from the broken engine. The crying sound came from inside. Jake approached carefully. The ship's door had been torn off in the crash. He looked inside with his flashlight. His breath caught in his throat. A creature lay in the corner of the small cabin. It was about the size of a large dog. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered gold and orange in the light. It had 4 legs, a long tail, and wings folded against its sides. One wing was bent at a wrong angle. Blood leaked from several wounds on its body. A Dragonling, a young member of the Drakthir species. Jake took a step back. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Drakthir. They were warriors, fierce and proud. They had been at war with dozens of species. Humans had a ceasefire with them, but it was tense. Fragile. The Drakthir did not trust humans. Humans feared the Drakthir. The creature made that crying sound again. Its eyes opened. They were bright amber, filled with pain and fear. It tried to move, but whimpered and fell back down. Jake should walk away. The smart thing was to return to his own crash site and wait for rescue. Getting involved with a Drakthir, even a young one, was dangerous. If adult Drakthir found him with their child, they might think he had hurt it. They might kill him without asking questions. But those eyes, so young, so afraid. The Dragonling reminded Jake of his nephew, little Danny, the same look Danny had after he fell off his bike and broke his arm. Scared and hurting and needing someone to help. Jake made his decision. He put down the metal bar and held up his empty hands. He spoke softly as he entered the small ship. "Hey there, little one. I am not going to hurt you. I want to help." The Dragonling hissed weakly and tried to snap at him with small teeth, but it was too weak. The bite did not even reach Jake's hand. Jake opened his medical kit. He worked slowly, letting the creature see everything he did. He cleaned the wounds as gently as he could. The Dragonling whimpered but stopped trying to fight. Maybe it understood. Maybe it was just too tired. The broken wing was the worst injury. Jake used the splints from his kit and wrapped them carefully. He had helped injured animals before on Earth. This was not so different. The Dragonling's breathing got a little easier when the wing was supported. Jake looked at the small creature. Its scales caught the light and glowed like embers in a fire. "I'm going to call you Ember," he said, "because you shine like fire." Ember made a soft sound. Not quite a purr, not quite a growl. something in between. Jake knew he could not stay here. His emergency beacon was back at his crash site. He needed to reach higher ground where rescue ships could spot him better. But he could not leave Ember here to die. He looked around the small ship and found cargo netting. He used it to make a carrier, padding it with the thermal blanket from his kit. Very carefully, he lifted Ember and placed the Dragonling in the carrier. Ember cried out in pain. Jake winced. "I know, I'm sorry, but we have to move." He secured the carrier on his back. Ember was heavy, maybe 40 pounds. With his own injuries, it would be hard. But Jake had carried heavier things. He would manage. Jake took one last look at both crash sites. Then he started walking into the dark forest. The trees towered above him. Strange sounds echoed in the night. He did not know what dangers waited ahead, but he knew one thing. He would not leave this wounded child behind. Not tonight. Not ever. Ember whimpered against his back. Jake kept walking, one painful step at a time, into the unknown darkness. The forest grew darker as Jake walked deeper into it. The two moons provided some light, but thick branches blocked most of it. Strange plants glowed with soft blue and green light along the ground. Jake had to watch every step to avoid tripping on roots. Ember whimpered with each movement. The carrier on Jake's back shifted and pulled at his shoulders. His injured arm throbbed. His ribs sent sharp pains through his chest with every breath, but he kept moving forward. "We are doing good, Ember," Jake said over his shoulder. "Just a little further tonight, then we rest." He had no idea if the Dragonling understood his words, but talking seemed to help. Ember's breathing became less panicked when Jake spoke. The terrain sloped upward. Jake climbed over fallen logs and pushed through thick bushes. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool night air. He stopped to drink water from his canteen. Then he tilted it back to let Ember drink. The Dragonling's tongue was rough and warm. It lapped at the water eagerly. When the water was gone, Ember made a soft, chirping sound. "You are welcome," Jake said. He smiled despite the pain. "We need to share. I only have 2 bottles." They continued climbing. Jake told Ember about Earth, about oceans and mountains, about his hometown in Colorado, about his nephew Danny, who loved dinosaurs and spaceships. "You would like Danny," Jake said. "He thinks dragons are the coolest thing ever. Wait until I tell him I met a real one." Ember's head rested against Jake's shoulder. The Dragonling had stopped crying. Maybe the pain medication Jake had given it was working. Or maybe Ember was just too tired to fight anymore. An hour passed. Then another. Jake's legs shook with exhaustion. He needed to rest, but he wanted to reach higher ground first, somewhere safer. Then he heard it. A low growl from the darkness to his left. Jake froze. He turned slowly, trying to see what made the sound. The glowing plants revealed a shadow moving between the trees. Something big. Something hunting. Another growl came from his right, then another from behind. Jake's heart pounded. There was more than one. They were being surrounded. He looked around quickly. A large tree stood nearby with low branches, but he could not climb it with Ember on his back, not fast enough. The first creature stepped into the moonlight. It was massive, maybe the size of a bear. It had 6 legs and a wide mouth full of sharp teeth. Its eyes reflected the light like a cat's. 2 more of the creatures emerged from different directions. Jake slowly reached for the metal bar he had tucked into his belt. It would not do much against 3 predators, but it was all he had. The creatures moved closer. They circled him, working together like wolves. Jake turned in place, trying to watch all of them at once. "Stay calm, Ember," Jake whispered. "I got you." The largest predator lowered its head and snarled. It was getting ready to charge. Jake raised the metal bar. His hands were steady even though fear rushed through him. He would not let these things hurt Ember. He would fight until he could not fight anymore. The predator lunged forward. Suddenly, heat blazed past Jake's ear. A small stream of fire shot from behind him, from the carrier. The flame was weak and only lasted a second, but it hit the charging predator right in the face. The creature yelped and jumped back. It shook its head, confused and startled. Ember had breathed fire. Even with its injuries, the Dragonling had tried to protect them. Jake did not waste the moment. He grabbed his flare gun from his emergency kit and fired it straight up. The flare exploded in a burst of bright red light above the trees. The forest lit up like daytime. All three predators howled and backed away from the sudden brightness. They hated the light. Jake fired his second flare directly at the nearest creature. It struck the ground in front of the predator in a shower of sparks. The creatures ran. Their heavy footsteps faded into the forest as they fled from the fire and light. Jake stood there, breathing hard. The flare above slowly fell back to earth, its light dying. Darkness returned to the forest. He reached back carefully and touched Ember's head. "Good job, little one. We make a good team." Ember made that chirping sound again. The Dragonling pressed closer against Jake's back. Jake realized something important in that moment. They had protected each other. He had carried Ember through danger. And Ember, even though it was small and hurt, had fought to protect him too. They were not just a human and a Drakthir anymore. They were something more. Two wounded beings who needed each other to survive. Jake started walking again. His body screamed for rest, but he wanted distance between them and this place. The predators might come back. After another 30 minutes, he found what he was looking for, a small cave in the hillside. It was not deep, maybe 10 feet, but it would shelter them from the wind and hide them from anything hunting. Jake carefully lowered himself to the ground. He slid the carrier off his back, moving slowly so he would not hurt Ember more. The Dragonling lay in the carrier, breathing softly. Jake gathered some dry wood and started a small fire at the cave entrance. The flames would keep predators away. He checked Ember's wounds again. The bandages were holding. The wing splint was still secure. "You did good tonight, Ember," Jake said quietly. "Real good." He shared his food ration with the Dragonling. Ember ate small pieces of the protein bar from Jake's hand. Then they both drank more water. Jake leaned back against the cave wall. Ember crawled out of the carrier and curled up against his side. The Dragonling was warm, almost hot. The scales felt smooth under Jake's hand as he gently petted Ember's head. "We will make it," Jake promised. "Both of us. Together." The fire crackled softly at the cave entrance. Jake added another piece of wood and watched the flames grow. Ember slept beside him, the Dragonling's chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The night was quiet now, except for distant animal calls. Jake knew he should sleep too, but his mind would not rest. He kept thinking about what happened with the predators, about how Ember had tried to protect him with that small burst of fire, about how they had survived together. He looked down at the Dragonling. In the firelight, Ember's scales shimmered like gold coins. The young creature looked peaceful now, not scared or in pain, just sleeping. Jake carefully unwrapped the bandage on his own arm. The bruise had turned dark purple. He applied some medicine from his kit and wrapped it again. Then he checked his ribs. They were badly bruised but not broken. He would heal. They both would. The temperature dropped as the night went on. Jake pulled his jacket tighter. Ember shivered and moved closer to him. Without thinking, Jake wrapped his thermal blanket around both of them. The Dragonling made a soft, rumbling sound, almost like a cat's purr. "You are a strange little dragon," Jake said quietly. "Your people are supposed to be fierce warriors. But you are just a kid, are not you? Scared and hurt and far from home." Ember's eyes opened slightly at the sound of his voice, then closed again. Jake stared at the fire. His thoughts drifted to his own home, to Earth, to the family he had left behind 2 years ago. He had not talked to his sister in months, had not seen Danny since the boy's 5th birthday. "I ran away," Jake said to Ember. "After my brother died. He was a pilot too. His ship exploded during a supply run. Equipment failure. Just bad luck." The words came easier in the darkness, easier when talking to a creature that could not judge him. "Everyone said it was not my fault, but I trained him. I recommended him for that route. I told him being a pilot was safe if you were careful." Jake's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "So I left. Took the furthest cargo runs I could find. Stayed away from Earth, from my sister, from Danny, because every time I looked at them I saw his face. Ember shifted and placed a small, clawed hand on Jake's leg. The gesture was gentle, intentional. Jake looked down at the Dragonling in surprise. Those amber eyes were open now, watching him with what looked like understanding. "You know what it is like to be scared, do not you?" Jake whispered. "To be hurt and alone." Ember made a soft sound and did not look away. Jake reached out slowly and scratched behind the Dragonling's small horns. Ember leaned into the touch, that purring sound rumbling louder. "Carrying you through this forest," Jake said. "Taking care of you. It is the first time in 2 years I have felt like myself again, like I have a purpose beyond just running." He looked at his hands. These hands that had run from responsibility, that had pushed away the people who loved him. But tonight, these same hands had carried a wounded child through danger, had protected something helpless. Jake stood up carefully and walked to the cave entrance. He looked out at the dark forest. Morning was still hours away. The stars above were unfamiliar, strange constellations he did not recognize. He heard movement behind him. Ember had crawled to the edge of the blanket, watching him with worried eyes. "I am not leaving," Jake said. "Just thinking." He returned to the Dragonling and sat back down. Ember immediately crawled onto his lap, curling up like a dog. The weight was warm and solid, real. Jake examined the small vessel's debris he had grabbed from the crash site. In the firelight, he could see symbols on a metal plate. He could not read the Drakthir language, but there were images. A crest, an official seal of some kind. "You are important, are not you?" Jake said. "This is not just any ship. Someone important was moving you somewhere safe." Ember watched him with those intelligent eyes. "Your family is probably looking for you right now," Jake continued. "Scared out of their minds. Just like my sister was scared when I stopped calling, when I pushed everyone away." He set the metal plate down and looked at Ember seriously. "I am going to get you home, little one. I promise you that, no matter what happens, even if your people do not trust me, even if they think I hurt you. I will make sure you get back to your family." Ember reached up with one small claw and touched Jake's face. The gesture was so gentle, so trusting, that Jake felt tears sting his eyes. "And when you are safe," Jake said, "I am going home too, to Earth, to my sister, to Danny. I am done running." The Dragonling chirped softly and settled back down in his lap. Jake added more wood to the fire. He knew dawn would bring new challenges. They still had kilometers to travel. His emergency beacon was back at the crash site, but he needed to reach higher ground where rescue ships could see them better. And then there were the Drakthir. If they found him with Ember, what would they think? Would they believe he had helped? Or would they see a human with their wounded child and assume the worst? Jake pushed those worries away. He would deal with tomorrow when it came. Right now, in this moment, all that mattered was keeping Ember safe and warm. He looked down at the sleeping Dragonling. This small creature had given him something he thought he had lost forever. A reason to care, a reason to fight, a reason to live beyond just surviving. "Thank you, Ember," Jake whispered, "for reminding me who I used to be, who I can be again." The fire burned low. Jake pulled the blanket tighter around them both. Outside the cave, the night continued its slow march toward morning. Jake closed his eyes, one hand resting protectively on Ember's back. For the first time in 2 years, he slept without nightmares. He dreamed instead of home, of second chances, of a little boy who loved dragons meeting a real one, of morning light and new beginnings. Jake woke to gray light filtering into the cave. Dawn had arrived. He sat up carefully, trying not to disturb Ember. The Dragonling still slept peacefully, curled against his side. Jake stretched his sore muscles and looked outside. The purple forest was visible now in the morning light. Mist hung low between the trees. Birds or bird-like creatures sang strange songs in the canopy above. He checked Ember's wounds. The bandages were still clean. The wing splint held firm. The Dragonling's breathing was stronger than yesterday. That was good. Ember's eyes opened. The amber gaze focused on Jake, and the Dragonling chirped happily. It was the first time Jake had heard Ember make a sound that was not fear or pain. "Good morning to you too," Jake said with a smile. He shared his last food ration with Ember, breaking the protein bar into small pieces. They drank the remaining water from one canteen. Jake stood and looked toward the hill above them. Somewhere up there was better ground, a place where rescue ships could spot them. He strapped the carrier onto his back and gently lifted Ember into it. The Dragonling settled in without fighting. It trusted him now. They left the cave and started climbing. The slope was steep, and Jake's legs burned with effort. His ribs ached with every breath, but he pushed forward, one step at a time. After an hour of climbing, Jake heard something that made him stop. A sound in the distance. Engines! His heart jumped. Rescue! Finally! He climbed faster, ignoring the pain. He reached the top of the hill and looked up at the sky. A ship was coming. It flew low over the forest, clearly searching for something. Jake pulled out his last flare. He was about to fire it when he saw the markings on the ship's hull. His blood went cold. It was not a human ship. The dark red hull with gold symbols was Drakthir, a patrol vessel, large and heavily armed. Jake's hand shook. Every instinct screamed at him to hide, to take Ember and run back into the forest, to wait for human rescue instead. The Drakthir were warriors. Their reputation was built on strength and violence. If they found a human with their wounded child, they might not ask questions. They might shoot first. Jake could hide. The ship had not seen him yet. He could wait in the forest until a human vessel arrived. It might take another day, maybe two, but it would be safer. He looked back at Ember. The Dragonling watched him with those trusting amber eyes. Ember needed medical care. Real medical care, not just bandages and splints. The Dragonling was stable now, but those wounds needed proper treatment. Waiting another day or two could be dangerous. Jake thought about what he had told Ember last night, about going home, about facing his fears instead of running, about being the person he used to be. He thought about his brother, about the choice to run that had cost him 2 years with his family. "I am not running anymore," Jake said quietly. He raised the flare gun and fired it into the sky. The red burst exploded bright against the gray morning. The Drakthir ship turned immediately toward them. Jake stood in the open clearing and waited. His heart pounded. His hands sweated, but he did not move. He carefully took Ember out of the carrier and held the Dragonling gently in his arms. The Drakthir ship landed 50 feet away. The engines kicked up dust and wind. Jake held Ember close and shielded the Dragonling from the debris. The ship's door opened. 4 Drakthir warriors emerged. They were huge, at least 7 feet tall. Their scales were dark red and black. They wore armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. All 4 weapons pointed at Jake. The lead warrior stepped forward. His armor had more markings than the others. A commander. His eyes were sharp and cold as he looked at Jake. Then his gaze dropped to Ember. The warrior's expression changed. His eyes widened. He said something in the Drakthir language, sharp and urgent. Jake did not understand the words, but he understood the tone. Shock, refirth, concern. Jake took a slow step forward. The warriors tensed, weapons rising. But Jake did not stop. He walked toward the commander with steady steps, holding Ember out carefully. "Your child is hurt," Jake said. His voice was calm despite his fear. "I found the crash site last night. I carried your little one through the forest to keep it safe." The commander stared at Jake. His hand moved to his weapon. For a terrible moment, Jake thought the warrior would shoot him. Then the commander lowered his weapon. He reached out and carefully took Ember from Jake's arms. Ember chirped and reached back toward Jake. The Dragonling made distressed sounds, not wanting to be separated. The commander spoke in heavily accented English. "You carried our child through the night." It was not a question. The warrior could see everything. Jake's untreated wounds, his torn clothes, the empty emergency kit on the ground, the careful bandages on Ember, the splinted wing. "Yes," Jake said simply. The commander barked orders in his own language. The other warriors lowered their weapons. One of them, wearing medical symbols on her armor, rushed forward. She took Ember from the commander and began examining the Dragonling. The commander studied Jake with unreadable eyes. "You are injured. You gave your supplies to our young one." Jake nodded. "Ember needed them more than I did." "Ember?" The commander's head tilted slightly. "That is what I called your child, because of the gold scales, like embers in a fire." The medic said something in Drakthir. She gestured to Ember's wounds, to the splint, to the bandages. The commander looked back at Jake. "The child says you protected it, shared water when you had little, fought a predator together." Jake was surprised. "Ember told you all that?" "Our young ones communicate differently than adults, but yes, the child spoke of you." The commander paused. "With trust." The commander gestured toward the ship. "Come, you will be treated for your injuries." Jake hesitated. Getting on a Drakthir warship seemed dangerous, but he was exhausted and hurt, and truthfully, he wanted to make sure Ember would be okay. Two warriors helped him walk to the ship. Jake's legs nearly gave out as the adrenaline faded. Inside, the ship was surprisingly clean and organized. The warriors guided him to a medical bay. The medic who had examined Ember worked on Jake next. She was efficient and gentle. She cleaned his wounds and wrapped his ribs properly. She gave him something to drink that tasted bitter but made the pain fade almost immediately. Ember lay on a medical table nearby. The medic had connected small devices to the Dragonling's wounds. They glowed with soft blue light. Jake watched as the cuts began to close, healing much faster than human medicine could manage. Ember's eyes stayed on Jake the whole time. When the medic tried to work on the wing, Ember cried out and reached toward Jake. "It is okay," Jake said softly. "They are helping you. Let them fix your wing." Ember seemed to understand. The Dragonling settled down, though it kept watching Jake. The commander entered the medical bay. He stood beside Jake and looked down at Ember. His expression was softer now, less cold. "The child is my commander's grandchild," he said. "Third offspring of High Commander Kreshtar. We have searched for 2 days since the crash." Jake's eyes widened. "I did not know Ember was that important." "Would it have mattered?" the commander asked. "Would you have left the child if it was not important?" Jake thought about that. He looked at Ember and shook his head. "No, I would have helped anyway. Ember was hurt and scared. That was enough." The commander made a sound that might have been approval. "I am Commander Velkar. I lead this search unit." "Jake Morrison, cargo pilot." "You are very far from human space, Jake Morrison." "My ship crashed. I was taking supplies to the mining colony on Verdansk 9. Got pulled off course by an ion storm." Velkar nodded slowly. "The same storm that brought down the child's transport. You both fell from the sky on the same night. Perhaps the universe arranged this meeting." Jake had never thought about it that way. Velkar continued, "We have been at war with many species for generations. We trust no one. We show no weakness. Our children are taught that other species are dangerous, that mercy is foolishness." The commander looked at Ember, then back at Jake. "But you showed our child mercy when you could have left it to die. You used your supplies on it. You carried it through danger. You protected it with your own life." Jake did not know what to say. "It was the right thing to do." "The right thing," Velkar repeated. Such simple words, but so few beings in this galaxy actually do the right thing when it is difficult. The ship's engines changed pitch. They were moving. Jake could feel the shift. "Where are we going?" he asked. "To the Drakthir fleet. High Commander Kreshtar will want to meet the human who saved his grandchild." Jake's stomach tightened. Meeting the Drakthir High Commander sounded terrifying, but he had come this far. He would see it through. Over the next hour, news of what Jake had done spread through the Drakthir communication networks. Velkar showed Jake the messages on a viewing screen. He translated some of them. Warriors were talking about the human who carried a Dragonling through the night, who gave up his own safety for a Drakthir child. The messages were filled with surprise, some with suspicion. but many with something that looked like respect. "You have done something unusual, Jake Morrison," Velkar said. "You have made my people question what they believe about humans, about mercy, about enemies." Ember's treatment finished. The medic carefully removed the devices. The Dragonling's wounds were almost completely healed. Even the wing looked much better, though it would still need time to fully mend. Ember jumped off the table and ran to Jake. The Dragonling climbed up onto his lap and curled there, chirping happily. Jake laughed and petted Ember's head. "You are feeling better, are not you?" Velkar watched this with keen interest. "The child has bonded with you. This is rare. Drakthir young ones do not trust easily." "Ember knows I am a friend," Jake said simply. The ship landed in a massive hangar bay. Jake could see dozens of Drakthir warships through the windows. Warriors moved in organized groups. This was the heart of their military fleet. Velkar led Jake through the corridors. Ember refused to leave Jake's arms. Warriors stopped and stared as they passed. A human walking freely through their flagship was clearly unusual. A human carrying one of their children was unheard of. They entered a large chamber. At the far end sat a Drakthir who was even bigger than Velkar. His scales were deep crimson with streaks of gold. His eyes were ancient and sharp. This was High Commander Kreshtar. The High Commander stood when he saw Ember. He spoke in the Drakthir language, his voice deep and commanding. Velkar translated. He says, "Bring me my grandchild." Jake walked forward carefully. He approached the High Commander and gently passed Ember to him. Kreshtar held the Dragonling with surprising tenderness. He examined Ember's healing wounds. He touched the splint that Jake had made from emergency supplies. His eyes studied every bandage, every careful treatment. Then he looked at Jake, really looked at him, saw the untreated wounds Jake had ignored, saw the exhaustion, saw the evidence of everything Jake had given up to protect Ember. Kreshtar spoke in careful English. "You carried my grandchild through darkness. You gave your resources, your safety, nearly your life." "Yes," Jake said. "Why?" Jake thought about all the complex reasons, about his brother, about running from pain, about finding purpose again. But in the end, the answer was simple. Because Ember needed help, and I could give it. Kreshtar was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "For 300 years, my people have known only war. We forgot what we once were. We forgot that strength without compassion is just cruelty." The High Commander set Ember down. The Dragonling immediately ran back to Jake. "You have shown us something we lost," Kreshtar continued. "You have shown us that an enemy can become a protector, that mercy is not weakness, that one act of kindness can change everything." He gestured to his warriors. "I am making you our liaison. You will help us remember how to trust, how to show mercy. You will teach us what you showed my grandchild in that dark forest." Jake looked down at Ember, then back at Kreshtar. A week ago, he had been running from everything. Now he stood at the center of something that could change the relationship between two species. "I accept," Jake said. Kreshtar nodded with approval. "You came to this planet running from pain. You leave it having found your purpose." Jake smiled. It was true. He had changed. The scared running man who crashed on Verdansk 7 was gone. In his place stood someone who had remembered what it meant to care, to protect, to choose courage over fear. Ember chirped and climbed onto Jake's shoulder. The Dragonling's small wing, still healing, brushed against his cheek. Jake looked at the Drakthir warriors watching him. He thought about his sister and Danny waiting on Earth, about bridges being built between species, about second chances and new beginnings. He had carried a wounded Dragonling through the night. By morning, everything had changed, not just for him, but for everyone. And this was only the beginning.